Moving on, tonight we're beginning a year-long, keep it a modest investigation into money, influence, and politics. Having just seen the indictment of Virginia's former governor on corruption charges, or the federal investigation into New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, you might think we're talking here about laws being broken. And in fact, when politics and money mix, they often can be. Not necessarily, though. As the journalist Michael Kinsley famously wrote about Washington, the real scandal is not what's against the law. The real scandal is what's legal. So what you're about to see tonight, what some are calling the extortion game, played for personal gain, they say, by the very politicians who make the rules, is all perfectly legal. The question is it also perfectly fine? That's for you to decide. Drew Griffin tonight is on the money trail.
We talk about corruption in third world countries. In this case, the corruptors have written the law to make it legal to the corruptees. And I consider that atrocious in the name of democracy.
What's got former Shell Oil President John Hofmeister so worked up is what many people in this town simply call business as usual. It's not only that money buys influence, it's also pay up else. It sounds cynical, but just look around, and you see it everywhere, like this typical Thursday morning. It's just after 7 a.m., and already the rush for the morning money is on. This is a breakfast fundraiser for Florida's Republican Governor Rick Scott. Want to contribute? It will cost you. The invitation says it's $2,500 to get in. Want a picture with the governor? That'll cost you $5,000. His host, the Principe Group. Remember that name. Governor Scott is in D.C. on the business of raising money, and once this event is done, he'll race across town to his next event, another fundraiser. It's all pouring into his Political Action Committee, a PAC. Political Action Committees are one of the main ways politics gets paid for. From PACs, the money flows into campaigns, often through Washington, where politicians always seem to have a fundraiser underway. Just down the street, this D.C. seafood restaurant will hold 4 fundraisers in the next 90 minutes. The man hurrying past our camera is Utah Democrat Jim Matheson. His ski pack is holding one of them. It's a $5,000 a plate breakfast, a fundraiser for a guy who would soon announce he's leaving Congress. Around the corner, a steakhouse is holding a breakfast fundraiser for the Republican chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Dave Camp of Michigan. For $5,000, the invitation says you'll be a star of his re-election campaign. On this Thursday morning, a dozen or so fundraisers will be held before a single congressional vote is cast. It's all status quo, says author Peter Schweizer. The business of politicians shaking hands and shaking down anyone who wants to do business here.
It is a feeding frenzy that's going on, and I think we need to somehow break the back of the ability of politicians to leverage their position to extract donations.
If that sounds like he's accusing politicians of using the power of their office to shake down constituents for cash, well, he is. Schweitzer is a fellow at the conservative Hoover Institute and head of a nonprofit research group called the Government Accountability Institute. He's also just written a book called Extortion.
The politician, particularly one in leadership or one that's powerful, can really make or break a company. So companies and other entities are put in a situation where they have to play ball, because if they don't, bad things are going to happen.
Basically, instead of buying votes, they are selling decisions.
Yes, I think the model, the way we always think of the influence market in D.C. Is that it's like bribery, that you have these outside interests that in effect bribing our politicians, and that certainly can take place. I think the bigger problem is more akin to extortion, where the politicians identify wealthy companies or industries and they basically mark them for extortion. They introduce pieces of legislation or they threaten certain things that put those entities in a position to where they have to play ball.
One person who knows all about this fully legal form of extortion is the former president of Shell Oil USA, John Hofmeister.
I realize that there is a price to participate in the political process. What I never knew was what a huge price it was and how it was an endless process of continuously being hit up for money.
In 2008, when oil prices were skyrocketing, Hofmeister was hauled before committee after congressional committee, 18 different hearings. Some members of Congress even threatened to nationalize his industry. The televised hearings, all political theater, he says. When the camera lights turned off, some of the very members who criticized him in public were asking for money in private. And he says, you'd better pay.
But there's a huge price to not pay the price of the campaign request.
Really?
There's a price in terms of access. There's a price in terms of interest by the member. And so if you haven't paid your price of entry, who are you? I've actually been asked by a member, who are you? Because I've never met you before. Now that the election's over, you're coming to ask me for something? Where were you before the election? And to me, that is just, it puts a sickness in my stomach to realize that it's all about the money.
What I think you're describing to me is wink and a nod extortion.
It's pay to play. And I agree with the word extortion. As harsh a word as that is, it's an atrocity that nobody seems to care about because it just goes on and goes on and goes on.
We wanted to ask Utah Democratic Congressman Jim Matheson about fundraising at his breakfast and specifically why he was raising money for his political action committee at the same time he was deciding to leave Congress. He wasn't interested. We also wanted to ask Michigan Republican Congressman Dave Camp why he needed so much money. He raised nearly $4.5 million in his last campaign. His opponent raised a paltry $37,000. Camp has blown out his closest challengers for years. So what's all this money for? No comment. And then there's Florida Governor Rick Scott. Remember that first fundraiser he was having? It was hosted by the Principe Group, a company founded by former Veterans Administration Secretary Anthony Principe. 2 days before hosting this fundraiser, Governor, the Principe Group gave $10,000 to Governor Scott's Political Action Committee, which is called Let's Get to Work. It turns out the Principe Group did get to work, at least in Florida, where in 2012, the group won a $1.8 million contract to help stop the closure of military bases. Like the two congressmen, Governor Scott wasn't exactly interested in talking about the relationship between fundraisers and contracts and doing business with the state of Florida.
Oh, you have to go talk to Let's Get to Work.
Last question.
We did ask the PAC, Let's Get to Work, but we got our answer back in an email from the Florida Republican Party, which says, the inference in your question is invalid and not worthy of a response. Governor Scott makes all decisions based on what is best for the people of Florida, what will create jobs, careers, and opportunities for its citizens. In other words, that D.C. fundraiser, the $10,000 donation, the $1.8 million contract, it's all just a coincidence.
Drew Griffin joins me now. Drew, there is all this money being raised. Do we know what it's for? I mean, especially when you have some of these congressmen who run almost unopposed in election after election.
Really, and some of these congressional districts so divvied up and gerrymandered that they really don't face any opposition. The money, Anderson, flows into these political action committees or PACs. And to be very blunt, the rules on what that money can be used for are so lax they become more or less slush funds for politicians. They can literally use the money to enhance their lifestyle, take trips, hold parties, even run up credit cards for daily expenses as long as it has marginally to do with the business of governing or politics.
And you're going to be looking more at this.
Yeah, this and the actual business of getting rich in Congress. Why now are so many, Anderson, the majority of our federally elected officials millionaires? Why are their sons and daughters and spouses in the lobbying business? Why are so many contracts going to firms where relatives work? Peter Schweizer claims this is all legalized extortion, and this is what we plan to focus on in the year ahead.
Good. Look forward to it. Drew, thanks very much. One note, I want to